Kia ora mai tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Members, I call on members' order of the day number 1.
Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 3, third reading.
I call Alfred Ngaro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 3 be now read a third time. Mr. Speaker, before I do, I just want to take the opportunity. I know my colleague David Bennett stole the limelight this afternoon when we was acknowledging about academic awards, and I know my colleague across the House here, Mr. Phil Twyford, would also want to go on record in acknowledging the fact that I want to start off with a little whakatauki that says this, that the wealth of a country is not judged by its oil and gold, but by the knowledge of its sons and daughters. And in that, I want to acknowledge that Oksana Ripena from Rutherford High School was awarded the top academic award. And that was great. And also too, there's Daisha Davies, who actually is the granddaughter of the Honourable John Carter, also won the Distinguished Award and Academic Award as well. So just want to go on record just acknowledging them as well. Mr. Speaker, returning back to the bill at hand. First of all, can I just acknowledge that it's a real honour to be able to, I think for any member, to be able to take a private member's bill through. I know, talking to my esteemed colleague over here to the left, the senior whip, it is the envy of his desire as an MP to be able to have a, so it is, I think, a real honour for any MP to be able to have a private member's bill come through the House. And with that, I'd like to start off my remarks by, first of all, just acknowledging that this bill did begin with the Honourable Maggie Barry. And so when she introduced this bill into the House, then she transitioned on to become a minister, and therefore then I then took over the custodianship of this bill, and was honoured to be able to.
What it is?
So
It sounds simple.
honoured to take on this bill. Can I? Can I also too just acknowledge the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, for which the passage of this bill traversed through, and what you call the chairperson, Scott Simpson, my colleague, and all the other members. And just want to thank them, because I was also too subbed on to their committee to hear the submissions throughout that whole passage as well, and to be able to then proceed the bill back into the House with a number of changes, mainly technical in nature. Want to also too then say that inside of that bill, want to mention that the SOP 418 in particular, which introduced new clause 6, which I think is quite significant and important, and I just mention it because it wasn't included in the initial drafting of the bill. But the intent of that was to ensure that when the bill is gazetted and comes into force and into law, that the current membership and existing membership of local boards will not be affected by this bill. So I think I just wanted to mention that as well. Mr. Speaker, I was listening to the previous debates in the House, and I want to acknowledge Grant Robertson for his bill as well. But actually, the member Ron Marks made quite an important remark where he said that often when you've gone through all three passages of the bill at committee stage, you end up at a place where actually a number of the technical issues have been addressed. So really it's commenting to them.
Can I just remind the member that he's now got only 6 minutes and 29 seconds left. He hasn't mentioned the name of the bill, any of the terms of the bill, or what it's going to do yet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must say that I think I did introduce the bill in its third reading to the House. So I'm not challenging the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, but it was mentioned once. I dare not challenge or trifle with the chair. I dare not challenge and trifle with the chair. But Mr. Speaker, the intent of this bill is around closing a loophole. There we go. And in the legislation, it is a minor loophole, but it's a loophole, I think that, and it covers two things. When we talk about democracy, in a sense of, in regards to local government, for which this bill actually is intended for, the areas around the fact is that at the moment the loophole exists where you can have both multiple candidacy but also multiple membership on a number of different local boards. So really that's the heart of the intent of this bill. And what this bill will do when it gets passed through with the support of others is that the bill will then close that loophole and ensure that there can still be multiple candidacy but there can only be one form of membership on one local board. Now, I know that there have been some remarks and people have talked about the fact of whether this is a democratic process, and I know others have challenged that. I just want to make a short remark on this. When we talk about democracy and the ability for people to be able to engage in a system of governance, and in this case local governance and the local body and local boards, we talk about representative democracy, but we also too need to talk about participatory democracy. And I believe that the role that this bill will play, it will increase the ability to have not only greater representation, but greater forms of participation. Currently, we have in the Auckland Council, there are 21 councillors, but there are 149 current local board members. And so that's quite a significant number that covers over 21 different electorate boundaries for the different wards that currently exist in the Auckland Council. So the intent of this bill is to ensure that the fact is that, and people have said, well, you know, is there an issue here for us that warrants us to make this change? We know that in the first elections of 2010, there were 3 candidates that were on 2 or more boards. That has increased, and in 2013, that increased to 5 members. So we know that the trend is heading up. Our intent for this bill, Mr. Chair, is to ensure that we ensure that others actually have a greater role of participation and representation into the local boards as well. Mr. Speaker, I want to acknowledge those who are on the local boards. They play quite an important role. I know that for our local boards, they're involved in managing local facilities, parks, local events. They draw up local board plans, promote local leadership, and identify and propose local bylaws and input into our CCO and economic development plans. They play quite a significant role. And being that it's now been almost 2 terms of this local government under the new laws, new local laws, what's also now happened is that there's been a greater sense of interest in participation. And I give by way of example that this week alone, for instance, I had a gentleman that came up, he'd seen my truck outside my office and was admiring this truck, but then noticed that knew that I'd be up in the office. He came up to the office and came to ask me about what it would be like for him to engage, to be able to put himself forward as a local board member. So we sat down and had a cup of tea and talked about this. And again, to me, this is the interest that's coming out. I've had 2 other people locally who've come to talk to me about this very issue. So to me, I think that this bill is important. I think actually it does draw on the opportunities for greater participation that people can have into local boards in particular. I want to just then mention a couple of remarks because there were 17 different submissions that were put through. Around about 5, there were all submissions. Out of that, only 3 opposed. And obviously the 3 that were in opposition, Mr. Chair, were those that were currently on 2 or more local boards. And there was some justification that they gave. The boundaries had changed. They'd been previously councillors under the 7 territorial authorities that were there. So for them, they'd had this sense of connectivity. I think, though, that what it also came to when it was really clear, though, is that now that we're evolving, I suppose, in our sense of understanding around the role of the Auckland Council, its executive of 21 councillors, its 149 local board members, people were beginning to see the importance of their ability to participate in that. I want to just then read just a couple of submissions that came through, which I think are really important and highlight and support the intent of this bill. I'd like to read from the Auckland Council, for instance, who clearly are in support. In fact, in their recommendation, supports the prohibition on local board members serving on multiple local boards at the same time. They do make this comment, and I know it's been raised before, where they say membership on more than one local board at a time has the potential to create the perception of conflicts of interest. And Mr. Speaker, I think this goes also to the heart of the aspect of that. What we want to do is not only have greater participation, greater representation, but also reduce those conflicts of interest that do exist for a number that are on there. And for instance, there are examples where the current membership of those who are on 2 or more local boards, they are actually boards that are actually bordering on either side of those wards. So when it comes to the issue of around bidding for financial bids, to be able to bid for whether it be issues around parks or reserves and so forth, there are conflicts that do exist and that can't be sort of said that those don't exist, and we know that they are, and we think that that's really important as well. Mr. Speaker, I just want to then close my remarks by just on a couple of submissions that talk about the equality of opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And on this, I think that's really important, where one of the submitters talks about by limiting members to only serving on one local board, I believe that the bill will also improve fairness in the local electoral system by creating a greater equality of opportunity for a wider range of people. So, Mr. Chair, I finish my remarks. I do thank all those that have been involved through the passage of this bill, those in the Select Committee and also those who have submitted, and I do commend this bill into the House.
Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Phil Twyford.
Thank you.